Today's talk, we're going to do a talk that I call Cybercrime 2025. And what we're going to be talking about is three different crime types that we're seeing very prominent right now. And we're going to talk about how, on the back end, they're all related to each other. So we're going to start off with toll road phish. Those annoying SMS messages, I'll explain in a minute why they're not SMS, that everyone's getting. And what is the goal of that? And how is that related to online fraud? Then we're going to talk about Indian call center scams. Most of these are going to be in the tech support range. You have a unauthorized charge on your card and you need to call us to get a refund. And then we're going to move on into crypto investment scams. Some people call them pig butchering, so I'm going to say that for recognition. I hate that term. But those three crime types, in our minds, they're separate. But what we're going to look at is how they're all related to one another. So let's just dive right in. Toll road phish started off for most of us in January. January 2025 was the first time that I'd ever received a toll road phish. And then in the course of a few days, I'd received a dozen. That's something that most of us can probably relate to. Here's two of the very prominent ones from the early days of this. The main one, though, that everyone was getting was for Easy Drive, Massachusetts. And what we see is that this was really the beginning of our Chinese scammers learning how America works. Everyone was getting, you have an unpaid toll in Massachusetts, and most of us don't live in Massachusetts. So then we started seeing spam that were for Easy Drive MA Georgia or Easy Drive MA Michigan. And they were missing the fact that the MA meant Massachusetts. So if we look at Google Trends, what we see is that everybody was talking about these around January 21st. And in fact, it was a trending topic at that time in all of these different states. Now, I would argue that part of those states didn't have a trending topic because there's no people there, but the people there get offended when I say that. Well, before we were trying to say what is the predecessor or the precursor to toll road phish, and the closest thing we could come up with was U.S. Postal Service failed delivery phish. And in these, you got a spam message that didn't ask you to pay a toll. It told you that a package had not been delivered and that the way to get that package delivered was to pay a $2 delivery fee. And they had an option for you to provide your credit card. Well, that $2 delivery fee or the $6 unpaid toll have something in common. But before we get to that, let's look at what else they all had in common. They're all from China. In January, we looked at 8,750 domains. So someone had to pay to register these domains that were all doing the failed delivery phish. And what we found about them when we looked at where they were hosted, we had 5,247 of them hosted at Tencent, another 698 at Alibaba, and 134 more in Hong Kong. But those in the middle, the Cloudflare is a reverse proxy that was originally created to prevent DDoS attacks. It has the nice side effect for the criminals, though, of preventing anyone from knowing where your server really is. So we're going to go out on a limb and say, with the other 6,000, all being on Chinese infrastructure, it's likely that the Cloudflare ones were on Chinese infrastructure as well. But were they related? So what we did is we picked several of those IP addresses that were prominent in the U.S. Postal Service phish and looked to see whether they were also hosting toll roads. And in fact, they were. So here's an example from early February. This IP, 43.159.148.16, had a whole bunch of U.S. Postal Service phish. And it also had pay toll CKI, CKD, CKC, CKF .top. And it also had easydrivema.com dash something .top. The interesting thing with the .com dash, if you're receiving this as a text message, it looks like they've hyphenated it And the easydrivema.com shows up on one line of your text message, where the rest, that garbage.top, is on the next line. And sometimes people think the easydrivema.com is the domain name. easydrivema is the host name. .com-garbage.top is the domain name. Well, as the Chinese fishers learned more about how America works, they realized they needed tollfish from other places. And we've seen the tollfish for Oklahoma, Louisiana, Utah, Washington, Louisville, Kentucky, Kansas, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Harris County, Texas, Atlanta, Chicago, Columbus, Seattle, Denver, Los Angeles. Why was it so easy for them to make so many fish? It turns out they're all using the same fish deployment systems. Now, there's several versions of this. The one that has lived the longest, in my opinion, and that really has a great user interface, is one that's called PandaShop. And this was one that we dove in deep on. PandaShop, although the server was technically in California, was also hosted on Alibaba, I believe. So Panda server allows someone to log in. You pay a rental fee to use the server. And what happens is they have predefined phishing kits for, at the time we did this investigation, which was late February, early March, they had 330 templates available that you could choose from. So after you logged into the server, you would choose, for example, I want AT&T points redemption to be my phishing theme, or I'd like your package delivery failed UPS to be my theme, or you have to pay a parking ticket in the UK. You just choose which theme you would like to apply, and then you provide the credentials for your own web server. So if I have a web server that I'm paying to host at Alibaba or Tencent or wherever, I give the credentials to PandaShop, and PandaShop has all of these phishing kits Dockerized. And what it does is it installs Docker on your web server, and then it deploys the Docker image from their server to your server. And that's all it takes. Choose the template, give it your credentials, push publish. Now, you can also use the PandaShop server to make your own phishing site by harvesting an active web server and then turning it into a phishing site by adding places to capture personal information and credit card details. So here's a little walkthrough from one more recent. This was in September. We had a New York Department of Taxation and Finance phish. And the four slides here, or four screens here, are the four phases of the phishing page. Once you got the phishing message, it would say, you need to check your refund status. And you would click check refund. It would say, oh, we need to know who you are. And because it's a tax website, it's not unusual for a tax thing to need your social security number. So it's going to get my social security number, first and last name, address, city, state, zip, my telephone number, and my email address. And then I say, check my refund. And it says, good news, you were under refunded. Basically, you get an additional $1,120. How would you like that refund? Unfortunately, sending it to your bank account is unavailable because of system maintenance, but we can deposit it onto your credit card or debit card. And so then they ask your card details, your cardholder name, your card number, expiration date, and CVV. Now, because the card is being checked with a loon checker, we know that we can put in any random 15 digits that start with a 4 or a 5, and then just rotate the last digit until the website says, oh, that passed the loon check, which is how we get to screen 4 of this phish without giving up our real credit card. When we do that, it says, oh, your refund is approved. It's 11:20. We've just sent you a text message to your cell phone provider or cell phone number that you provided, and you need to enter the 6-digit code in order for us to process your refund. But that's not actually what's happening there. The 6-digit code is being sent not by the phisher. The 6-digit code is being sent by your bank, and the code is to authorize a addition of your credit card to someone's Apple Wallet or someone's Google Wallet. So what they're using that 6-digit code for, as they get your information, they now send a transaction to say, we would like to load this credit card onto our cell phone. and your bank sends a one-time password to the cell phone of record, and that 6-digit code authorizes them to put the credit card on their cell phone. What's the problem with that? Well, the cell phone's sitting somewhere in Asia. These are Chinese organized crime. They might be in Myanmar, they might be in Laos, they might be in Cambodia, but it's Chinese organized crime. How do they then use that credit card without triggering everybody's fraud alerts? If you're going shopping in Laos with my credit card from Alabama, that's not going to fly. My bank is going to stop that. That's where remote tap comes in. And we've got a little video on my YouTube about it. We're not going to show the video right now, but feel free to search for Intelligence for Good on YouTube and you'll see it. But the remote tap, there are three phones involved. One is the phone that has your credit card now sitting in its Apple Pay wallet. Then you have two cards running the remote tap software, or two phones. One of those phones is sitting in Thailand, let's say Bangkok, Thailand. And that phone, you log in and you say, this is the card reader phone. The other phone is anywhere in the world. And that phone, you choose the setting that says, this is my point of sale terminal, or my point of sale, my tapping phone. So one of the phones is going to read the Apple Pay wallet by NFC, near field communication. It's going to read your wallet. But as soon as it does, that card that it read is going to be transferred over the internet so that the point of sale tapping phone can tap the card that's sitting on a phone in Bangkok, no matter where you are. And as a demo, in our video, we link our two phones together. I leave one of the phones sitting in my car, and I go buy gift cards with the second phone, doing tap to pay at both a Target and a Walgreens in my case, to show that I could tap out with that credit card, even though the card was sitting in my car, which we were pretending is Bangkok. Now, this is really common. This is a multi-billion dollars of theft technique. And what we see on Chinese Telegram, because all of these criminals are selling their services to one another on Telegram, what we see is dozens or even hundreds of phones loaded up with stolen credit cards that they can either ship to you or they can assist you in doing a remote tap. Now, that remote tap coordination is happening through crime as a service option, or crime as a service entities that we call guarantee syndicates. And the most famous of these you may have heard of if you read Wired Magazine, for example. Wired Magazine did a study about this with Elliptic, or they reported on Elliptic's study. Elliptic called HuanPay and their Huang guarantee, which means good fortune guarantee, an $11 billion criminal marketplace in July of 2024. By January, they were calling it a $24 billion marketplace. And more recently, we've seen numbers up in the $40 billion range. And in fact, as a result of this, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN, put out guidance that they should be considered a primary money laundering threat. And later they were sanctioned. Now, these guarantee syndicates, there are many of them. We've got Huang, Squirtle, Dubai, Red. That might be I think that's Red Magpie. Sorry for the typo there. ML Bull, Bian, Jinbi, Ling Hong, and Dan Bao. The Dan Bao one is actually called Potato Guarantee. The top is potato and the bottom is guarantee, which Dan Bao is the Chinese word for guarantee. What we saw, though, is that each of these is a crime as a service network where why they're called guarantees is that each vendor makes a deposit in USDT cryptocurrency to the guarantee. And the guarantee says, if you shop with this vendor to buy criminal services, we will make you whole up to the amount of that criminal's deposit if they rip you off. So it's a way of introducing trust into the Telegram crime world. Here's an example from ML Bull, which is one of those 8 major guarantee syndicates we're tracking. ML Bull has categories of crime, and when you pick one of the categories, then you will be presented with a list of the vendors who are offering that crime type. And most of those vendors have a dedicated Telegram channel themselves. So one of the big ones is the collection services. And then on ML Bull, category 2 and 3 are both collection services. Category 14, by the way, is overseas phishing, cat pond, which means SMS box, and script customization, which means building websites for phishing. So category 14 is our SMS phishing. Category 2 and 3, though, are our collections. And let's look at how those work. When we went into category 2 and 3, between them, there were 656 different vendors who are offering collection services. And what a collection service is, hey, we know you've got cards sitting on a phone somewhere in Asia and you want to go shopping with them. That's one of the aspects of collection services. So this guy is a vendor on ML Bull, and he says here's his Chinese ad, which translated it into English here. The bottom box in red, though, that says over 200 buyers worldwide. And he mentions that they can go shopping for you in the US, Canada, UK, Italy, Portugal, Spain, Germany, Switzerland, Netherlands, Denmark, etc. What that means is he has Chinese affiliates on the ground in that country who are prepared to do the remote tap. They can buy anything you can buy by tap to pay using the credit cards that have been loaded on the phones back in, we'll just say, Asia. Another service that the collection people are offering is we'll go pick things up for you. So if in your scam, you tell someone they have to cash out their bank account and turn it into a gold bar, and an agent of the FBI will be by to pick it up later, this is how it works. One of these guys is a collection guy. He's based in Chicago. The phisher sends them a map that says, here, you're going to go to Milwaukee and pick up this gold bar. And then once they've done it, they send a picture back. Yes, I have the gold bar. And they send them to a pawn shop to sell the gold bar, turn it into USDT, and wire the USDT overseas. Here's another one of these collection services guys. This guy calls himself Caesar. And again, this is translated from Chinese. But he says his name is Zhao. He's from China. He specializes in wire, CP, CC, and gift cards, but a cash and gold pickup. My people are distributed over Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, Phoenix, Boston, New York, Syracuse, Washington, Dallas, North Carolina, Atlanta, Chicago, and St. Louis. And they can pick things up for you, or they can do remote tap for you. And when they do the remote tap, they're most often going to be going after gift cards or luxury goods, electronics, handbags, things like this. So what else do these collection services do? Turns out they're also picking up piles of cash for the cartels. So in this case, I'm sorry, I've got the wrong screen up. This is a different pickup. I lost my track there. Okay. St. Louis County woman sentenced to 93 months in prison for gun and fraud crimes. The other group that's doing a lot of cash pickups is the Nigerians. In this case, a woman who was previously a romance scam victim becomes a complicit money mule when she begins accepting cash packages at her home address on behalf of her boyfriend, who's in Nigeria, who she probably thinks is an offshore oil platform worker or something. And so in this case, when they did the investigation, they said that she'd received 70 express mail packages had been delivered to her home in a 60-day period. So she's getting more than one package a day. And most of these packages are either gift cards, gold, money, or cashier's checks. And then she's depositing those funds and sending them on to her boyfriend. Over the course from September 1st until April 1st, they think she received 193 packages of that sort. So it's not always the Chinese when you see cash collection, but that is our focus today. So what does that have to do with Indian call center scams? And why are we even looking at Indian call center scams? Well, I'm a numbers guy. I like to look at the data behind what crimes are most significant and what crimes should I spend my time investigating because of that. And when I look at the numbers in 2024, the FBI's IC3.gov had $1.8 billion that was stolen in call center scams from 53,000 American victims. And the call center scams, they broke them down into two categories: tech support scams and government impersonation. But it's the same people doing the same stuff. They just use a different lure on the front of it. 36,000 tech support scam victims and 17,000 government impersonation victims in 2024. And if we compare those numbers to previous years, what we see is that although the victim count isn't going up that much for tech support scams, the dollars are. We went from 800 million in 2022 to 900 million in 2023 to 1.4 billion in 2024. And that's just the tech support scams. So given that this is a significant scam that's impacting 50,000 plus people for $1.8 billion in theft, let's look into it some more. Instead of Telegram, where I've focused primarily on these Indian call center scams, and I will say that is a generic term, Indian call centers. When we dug into them, it is about 80% India, but it's about 15% Pakistan, and perhaps 5% Philippines as well. But these are the kinds of Facebook groups, just like Telegram was offering crime as a service in the guarantee syndicates in China. On Facebook, we have over 600 that we're tracking, Facebook groups that are dedicated to crime as a service related to supporting illicit call centers. And here's some of the ads that we've seen. These were all in the month of October. This one is from someone who calls themselves Cruddy Cruddy. They're in a group called World of Tech Support. And they start off: blue screen of death calls, 50 plus age filter, Microsoft pay per click, pay per call, 45 plus age filter, iOS pop-ups, age filter applied, PayPal emails, iOS pushes. And what they're saying is, we're going to cause people to get a message on their computer or their phone that will make them call your call center, and you will pay us based on how many calls come from our source. And that's a very common model. This guy, Sanjay Singh, okay, that one was September, is saying he has Coinbase pay per call, iOS, PayPal, blue screen of death, banking, Wells, Chase, Charles Schwab, porn pop-ups, and he also has toll-free number forwarding available. And if somebody pranks you or has a blank call, you'll get a refund on the call. Bidubos is saying the same thing. They've got Robinhood pay per call, banking, phishing, antivirus pay per call, printer, tech support, YouTube, Meta, Amazon, etc. And because they think they're in a closed community of criminals offering services to each other, many of these have telephone numbers associated, but we also see that there are aliases being used. So Call Center USA, Worldwide Business Process Optimization Campaigns, had a guy named Scott Aki, who's offering exactly the same messaging style as John Williams is offering in tech support calls, but they're both offering the same telephone number, a +91 telephone number there. Now, that technique is called either email blasting or SMS blasting. Gosh, that sounds very similar to sending toll road phish to start a call, doesn't it? But these are telephony based rather than taking you to a website at the beginning. But the way they force this callback, the most common ones that were successful in 2024 in particular, were refund ones. Your credit card is going to be charged. Your account is limited or terminated. We notice you're logging in from Romania today. Something that's going to kick you into panic mode. When we panic, we don't think logically, and we're more likely to become a scam victim. So let's look at this one. Email blasting really hasn't changed that much in 5 years. All of these are offering a refund style. So Norton Refund in 2020. This one, Microsoft Defender, which was a refund one in 2021. Norton PayPal Coinbase in 2020. 2. Email blasting available in 2024. And now, even this month or last month, tech support calls. Delhi Noida Chandigarh is offering Windows Defender calls. Well, that panic thinking I was talking about, there's a great book called Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. And it tells us about system one thinking and system two thinking. System one is our panic thinking. System two is that slow, logical, methodical thinking. So if you're thinking about a purchase, you would like to go home and consider it, talk to your loved ones about it, look at your balance on your bank accounts, look at your budget, and then buy something. The job of a salesperson is to force you into panic or system one thinking. Hey, wouldn't you like the new car today? Wouldn't you like this stereo? It's available 20% off today only. And those kind of reactions are trying to force your decision making from system two to system one. Well, the scammers are doing exactly that. This is a email that really does come from PayPal that says that Coinbase is charging you $499.99. And if you think that's a problem, you can call customer support at 888-653-5205 if you'd like to cancel that transaction. Well, I don't want $500 to hit my debit card, so I'm going to call. Have I thought that through? Have I thought about why would PayPal be sending me a Coinbase email? No, I'm in system one. I'm going to call the number. And what happens when you call the number is you get connected to a telephone agent who probably has an Indian or a Pakistani accent and is going to tell you that they are the company that you're calling. And they're going to prove this by connecting you to a remote control website. They don't explain it exactly like that. What's happening is they're going to say, I need you to visit this website, and we'll use that to confirm your refund. And the scripts vary, but one version of the script is, and so all of these, you might recognize these as things like PC Anywhere, where you're going to authorize a remote person to have access to your machine by putting their code into the browser. And when you do, that's interpreted as we now have rights to remote control your machine. And they're flavoring their web pages. These were actually all on the same IP address, but sometimes it was Microsoft, Norton, Coinbase, Chime, PayPal, or Apple support. Whichever one of those you chose, you've just granted remote control access to your computer. And the way the script works is, well, we can authorize a refund, but first we need to make sure somebody hasn't already done the refund. Would you bring up your bank statement so we can see if there's a refund has already been issued? And we need your live bank statement. So they have remote control of your machine. Now they're going to get you to log into your bank to prove you haven't already got the refund. And when you do that, there's a really good chance that your screen is going to go blue with a message that says, please hold while we verify your account. Okay, they've locked you out of your own screen and they can do whatever they want in the background at that point. I thought that was it, that they're going to possibly steal some money from your bank account. But I found a really interesting case that helped us understand that there is a measure that's happening there. So if they look at your bank account and it's got $800 in it, they might say, we want to charge you $100 for ongoing tech support or ongoing cybersecurity or whatever the situation is. But there are bigger plays that are available if it turns out you have a big bank balance. My favorite story about this was recently. This was a September announcement, but it was actually work that had been done a couple of years ago. But they had some of the headline from the Southern District of California DOJ office was YouTube scam baiters helped dismantle a $65 million multinational fraud ring targeting thousands of seniors. And we've gone partway in this many times, my students and I, but these guys go all the way. So this scam baiter his channel is called Scammer Payback. And what happens, he starts with an email that he received offering or letting him know that he's paid for his Microsoft Defender subscription. And he calls using a voice modulator to make it sound like he's a little old lady. And when the scammers take remote control of his machine, they notice that he's just had a $50,000 deposit from the Cash First Baptist Cash First Baptist Bank of Sarasota. Um, that doesn't make any sense to me, but it doesn't have to. These people are not American. They don't understand our culture very well. But what they're showing him is, look, here's where your PayPal charge happened. How did that happen? They have actually edited his statement and redisplayed their edited version of his statement to make it seem that the $299 charge really is in his bank transaction history. Well, they now ask the scam baiter they pull up a black command shell prompt and enter a command that makes it say, please enter your refund amount. And they're like, it says $299.99. Why don't you just say $300? But you have to type it in because it's your refund. He types in 300 and hits enter. And immediately it says refund issued for $30,000 instead of $300. At this point, the Indian call center scammer goes nuts and says, oh no, I'm going to lose my job. You just made me send you $30,000. And of course, the scam baiter is saying, no, no, I didn't. But he's got it on the screen. You type, and here's what it says. It says you asked for a $30,000 refund, which is part of their scam. At this point, little old lady scammer payback says, how can I help? And they say, well, go to your bank and withdraw the $30,000 cash that we just sent you and put it in a box and ship it to us. Well, he agrees to do that and invokes the second group of scam baiters. The second group of scam baiters uses the name Trilogy Media, and they also have a YouTube channel all full of scam baiter stuff. Actually, the two of them working together, they go to the address that the delivery is supposed to happen to and say they're there to deliver the box of cash. However, that address is an Airbnb, and the person at that address is a Chinese student who's been instructed to go rent this Airbnb for 2 days so he can receive packages there. And in 3 different cases, this scam baiter combination in all 3 cases ended up delivering the package to an Airbnb rented by a Chinese student. Where does the Chinese student get his job? He's part of one of these collection scams or collection crews that are being offered for sale in our Chinese guarantee shops. So this was really interesting to me because we've just now made a connection between the Indian call center scammers and these guarantee shops. Now, the story I got confused and started to tell a moment ago, there was another big case this year where $92 million in cash was deposited into Chinese collection agent bank accounts where Chinese people went and picked up boxes of cash from the Sinaloa cartel and deposited those into bank accounts and sent the funds overseas. So what we're seeing come together here is Chinese money laundering, Indian call center scam, and even drug cartel money all coming together. But Indian call center scams were not the number one crime type this year. The number one crime type actually was crypto investment scams. When we look at crypto investment scams, again, I put these into the context. I used to be very interested in business email compromise, and I still am. Business email compromise is why I started looking at West African organized crime, which is still a significant research area for me. Starting in 2015, the FBI's Internet Crime and Complaint Center said that business email compromise was the number one crime by losses every year. And we see those losses go up from 246 million, 360 million, 676 million, 1.2 billion, 1.7, 1.8, 2.3, 2.7, and last year 2.9 billion. But in 2022 and 2023, even though the number's still going up, that's not the number one crime anymore. By losses, the number one crime was crypto investment scams, and not by a little bit. In 2022, crypto investment scams hit 3.3 billion in losses. In 2023, it hit 4.5 billion in losses. And in 2024, and these are just the losses reported to the FBI, $6.5 billion was lost by 47,000 victims. The other place that we look for numbers is the Federal Trade Commission. And the Consumer Sentinel Network is part of the FTC's reporting on fraud. And what we saw there is the same in 2022, 2023, 2024. The number goes up 3.8 billion, 4.6 billion, 5.6 billion. But here's the interesting thing. In the Consumer Sentinel Network data, crypto investment scams were only 4.5% of the complaints they received, but they were 45.5% of the fraud losses. So even though it's only less than 5% of the victims, it's 45% of the fraud losses. And that made it very interesting to me to chase. By the way, is crypto crime impacting our elders disproportionately? Absolutely. Crime complaints by age group, and then what percentage of those involved crypto crimes? Out of 4.8 billion in cybercrime losses to people aged over 60, 2.8 billion of them involved crypto. In particular, the narrowest and most focused area of that is crimes where money was deposited into a crypto ATM. That is almost exclusively elders. And many of those who are depositing crypto into an ATM are victims of those Indian call center scams that we were mentioning. But let's look at this. Here's a quote from a friend of mine in the Toronto Police Department, David Coffey. David says that just in the Toronto PD, they're getting 45 to 50 complaints a day on crypto investment scams. 45 to 50 per day. And he says these are inherently complex scams that can take from 6 to 18 months to investigate. Now, that has caused them, it says, to be forced to triage. What does that mean in real people terms? Most complaints are not going to get an investigation. But let's do some math with that. 45 complaints per day in Toronto. Let's call Toronto 3 million people. If we project that number of complaints against Canada, that would be 600 complaints a day. If we project it across the whole US, that's 5,000 complaints a day. And if we did that across a year, that would be 1.8 million complaints. But the FTC only saw 118,000, and the FBI had closer to 50,000. What we're talking about is possibly 90% of these crimes go unreported. Okay, what do we mean by a crypto investment fraud? I'm using SEC Rule 10b guidance. SEC has civil mostly, but their guidance on whether something is a violation of Rule 10b is when a crypto investment scam or any investor is making a false or fraudulent claim to attract investors. And when I say that a website is a crypto investment scam, what I'm talking about is claims like this. In 5 hours, you will get a 60% return on your investment. In 3.5 days, you'll get a 100% return on your investment. In 30 days, you'll get 2% every day for 30 days. Or in 30 days, you'll get a 140% return on your investment. This is crypto. You can't make guarantees like that. That is a false or fraudulent claim to lure an investment. We ran a project all through calendar 2024 that we called 20 Targets for Takedown. In this, we documented those types of websites. We shared all of those publicly, and we're still sharing them all publicly. If you go to urlscan.io and search for task tags crypto scam, that will show you all the things my team has reported. We've reported over 60,000 of these so far. And many of them look exactly the same. Here's a template that we've seen 1,056 domains use over 2 years. And here's 121 domains that have used this one going back 5 years. Where are these scams coming from? Well, it turns out they're coming from scam compounds. You may have seen a report, Transnational Crime in Southeast Asia, a growing threat to global peace and security, by the U.S. Institute of Peace. And they're estimating that scam compounds where people are being abused and trafficked, either through wage abuse or through physical abuse. Sometimes it's lured by a promise of a great paying job and then beaten when they don't do the job. But they're estimating that there are 100,000 people involved in Cambodia, 120,000 in Myanmar, and across Southeast Asia, about 500,000 people involved in this. That was in 2023. It was estimates about 2023 in a report that came out in May of 24. Another report from the UN Office of Drugs and Crime, and they did a follow-up report in April, was showing the locations of these scam compounds. This is the border of Myanmar with China, with Laos, with Thailand, and then in Cambodia, they're in the borders of Thailand and the borders of Vietnam and the open ocean as well. Those are the places where these major scam compounds are. And what we saw was, as we looked at the investigations, we started seeing that the money could flow back to those places. One of these websites was talked about by a friend of mine named Karina, who mentioned in a podcast she did a group that was called Kraken Futures CKF. And Kraken Futures CKF had a website that was basically like a roulette wheel. I'll tell you about that in just a second. We found 820 domains had looked exactly like Kraken Futures, of which 172 were live. So we made websites on all of them. And what we found was that the cryptocurrency wallets offered on many of the websites were exactly the same no matter which website you were on. So it wasn't just Kraken Futures, it was also Trust Futures and NASDAQ futures and DeFi futures. But all of these websites offered groups of websites, had the same crypto wallets, but all of those crypto wallets at the next hop started consolidating and ended up paying out to a group of crypto addresses on a website in Bangkok, Thailand. This is what it looks like when you're a scam victim. The coach or the boyfriend, if it's a romance scam, explains to you how to withdraw your funds and how to send them into Wisdom Futures in this case. And so here's a person sending $7,000 into their Wisdom Futures wallet, which looks just like Kraken Futures. And then what happens is they convince them that cryptocurrency investment is really like a futures game. And you just have to say, is the fund going to go up or down in the next 5 minutes? And if you get it right, you can double your money. So our victim here bet $870 and then $1,450 and then $2,030, $5,800, $14,000, $18,000, $25,900. And after a few months, they believed they had $2.8 million in their bank account. Not bank account. This was in their investment account, but there is no investment account. When they put money into this platform, it goes directly to the criminal. Then when they tried to take the money out, oh, your withdrawal is under review. Your audit has failed. And they have fine after fine after fine that they have to pay. You can't ever get the money back. And many people are tricked into paying a 20% capital gains tax or a 5% fee, throwing even more money in to try to get their $2.8 million out. At Intelligence for Good, which is a nonprofit that my friends at Dark Tower and I started, we call these crimes with no natural predator. And the idea behind them is if you go after a brand, the brand will fight back. But when you go after my 80-year-old mother, your friend, your relative, nobody's there to fight for them. And so what we work on is trying to find ways to identify not just the websites and take them down, but to identify the cryptocurrency wallets and get them blocked. So these are some examples of that. We're running short on time. We are gathering a small army of volunteers to help us with this. This QR code, if you scanned it, would link you to a page where you could sign up to learn more about becoming a volunteer in our group. One of the other major podcasts that we love to plug on this, episode number 172 of Click Here, was about one of these scams where they joined the group not through a romance scam, but by getting a WhatsApp invite where they were joined to a group of WhatsApp investors. And that's going to put us right at our 45-minute mark. It's been such a pleasure to have the opportunity to talk with you today, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of this virtual conference.